Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise, get straight to the insights you really need. Today, we're diving into something critical, something that, frankly, everyone should be aware of. Man-in-the-middle cyber attacks, or MITM for short. These aren't just, technical jargon. They're stealthy threats. They actually insert themselves right into your digital conversations, often without you having any clue. So our mission today is to really peel back the layers on these attacks. We want to make it clear what an MITM attack actually is and how criminals carry them out in, well, two main stages: interception and then decryption. And crucially, what impact this has in the real world. Our insights today come from experts in the field, like Vinci Cybersecurity. They're actively on the front lines, informing people, yes, but also protecting clients against these dangers. So you'll get a sense of the threat, but also the kind of vigilance needed today. Okay, let's dive right in then. Man-in-the-middle attacks. It sounds almost like something out of a spy movie, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
what does it actually mean in, the digital world?
It really does have that spy thriller feel, but yeah, it's a daily reality online. Essentially, an MITM attack is when a criminal positions themselves right in the middle, smack dab in the middle of a digital conversation between you and an application we're using.
Like your bank.
Or shopping.
Exactly. Think of it like a malicious third party just slipping in between you and your online banking portal. Or maybe that e-commerce site you're browsing. It really undermines that basic trust we have online. And the goal here isn't always just simple theft, though that happens. It's about exploiting that fundamental assumption we all make, right? That when you type in your bank's address or whatever, you're talking directly to them.
Right.
But these criminals, they might imitate one of the parties, make you think you're securely logged into your bank, but nope, you're talking to the attacker. Or sometimes they just sit there quietly, eavesdropping, collecting info.
And what kind of info are we talking about?
Oh, the sensitive stuff. Credit card numbers, login credentials, your account details. Pretty much anything valuable that flows through that connection they've intercepted. It's data you assumed was private.
That really broadens the scope, doesn't it? If they can get between any two parties, that seems like a huge potential problem.
Yeah.
Are there specific things that make us more vulnerable? Like certain websites, or maybe how we connect?
Yeah.
And you mentioned severe consequences. What's the worst that could happen if someone gets caught in one of these?
You're absolutely right. The net is incredibly wide. Any site needing a login is a potential target. So yeah, e-commerce, financial institutions, SaaS companies, they're definitely prime targets. But it's also how and where you connect. Public Wi-Fi is a big one. Using that coffee shop's free Wi-Fi, that dramatically increases your risk.
Okay.
As for consequences, well, once they get that data, it can be really severe.
Yeah.
Think about unauthorized password changes, full-blown identity theft, moving funds out of your account without approval. And here's something else. It's not always just a quick hit. Sometimes an MITM attack is just the first step. It can be the way in for something much more long-term and sinister, like an advanced persistent threat, an APT,
Meaning?
meaning they use that initial access to get a foothold, stay hidden inside a system, and just keep siphoning data over a long period. It's not just a smash and grab, it's a long con.
So it definitely underlines the severity. It's not a one-off thing. And you mentioned stages, calculated stages. So for someone just, logging into their bank app on their phone, what's that first move the attacker makes? How do they actually get in the middle, that interception part?
Right. Interception. It's exactly what it sounds like. Getting access to your traffic. They manage this by cleverly rerouting your communication. So instead of going straight to the bank server, it goes through their network first.
Before it ever gets where it's supposed to go.
Precisely. They insert themselves right into the path your data takes. And they have some pretty creative ways to do this. One common method, maybe surprisingly simple, is what's called a passive attack via malicious Wi-Fi hotspots.
The coffee shop Wi-Fi again?
Often, yeah. Those free public networks that don't need a password, you connect to coffee shop free Wi-Fi, and if that hotspot was set up by a criminal or compromised by one, they can now see everything you send and receive over it. Plain text, passwords, everything. You've basically invited them in.
Okay, that's scary. What else?
Then there's IP spoofing. This is more technical. They disguise their machine as a legitimate application or server. They do this by changing the IP address information in the data packets. It's like changing the return address on an envelope.
So your computer thinks it's talking to the real bank.
Exactly. It tricks your system, sends you to a fake website that looks identical to the real one, but it's controlled by them. Kind of related is ARP spoofing. This one usually happens on a local network, like at home or in an office. A LAN. Think of your local network like a small phone book. matching device names or IP addresses to their physical hardware addresses, their MAC addresses. ARP spoofing is like the attacker scribbling in that phone book. They send out fake messages saying, hey, the IP address for the user's computer, yeah, that now points to my hardware address.
So all the data meant for you goes to them instead?
On that local network, yes. It gets rerouted to the attacker's machine.
Okay. And there was one more? DNS.
Right, DNS spoofing, or sometimes called DNS cache poisoning. The DNS, the domain name system, is like the internet's main phone book. It translates website names we type, like google.com, into the numerical IP addresses computers use. This attack involves compromising that DNS server or your computer's local record of DNS entries and changing the address record for a legitimate website.
So you type mybank.com.
And the corrupted DNS tells your browser to go to the attacker's fake mybank.com IP address instead of the real one. Again, you land on their malicious site.
It's really quite something. They're not just listening in. They're actively manipulating the infrastructure, rerouting mail, changing addresses, swapping phone numbers in the directory.
That's a good way to put it. They insert themselves into the communication path at different layers.
Okay, so they've managed to intercept the traffic. Stage 1 complete. But what about encryption? So much online traffic uses HTTPS, right? That little padlock icon. That means it's scrambled, secure. How do they actually read that encrypted data? What's the next step? The decryption.
Ah, yes, the decryption stage. This is where things get even more sophisticated. And the really unsettling part is that even with SSL or TLS encryption, those protocols that create the secure connection, the HTTPS attackers have found ways. It's often less about brute forcing the encryption, like cracking a super complex code, and more about exploiting the process of setting up that secure connection, exploiting the trust mechanisms.
Bypassing the security rather than breaking it head on.
In many cases, yes. And crucially, a lot of two-way SSL traffic communication going back and forth can potentially be decrypted without setting off alarm for the application or the user. One common method is HTTPS spoofing. You try to connect to a secure site, say your bank again. Your browser asks for the site's security certificate to verify its identity.
That's the normal process.
Right. But in this attack, the attacker intercepts that request and sends back a fake certificate. It looks legit, maybe even has a familiar name. Your browser might be tricked into accepting it. If it does, the attacker now sits in the middle, decrypting everything you send before forwarding it, maybe to the real bank, and encrypting the bank's replies using their own key.
So they become the translator, essentially.
A malicious translator, exactly. They see everything in plain text in the middle. Then there's something called SSL Beast. This one targets a specific known weakness, a vulnerability, in an older version of TLS encryption version 1.0. It's a bit complex, but basically, they inject some malicious code, often JavaScript, into your browser session. This code then works with the MITM attacker to grab encrypted session cookies, those little bits of data websites use to keep you logged in. And because of the vulnerability in TLS 1.0, they can figure out parts of your encrypted traffic and eventually decrypt those cookies and authentication tokens.
Stealing your active login session, basically.
Effectively, yes. Another technique is SSL hijacking. This happens right at the beginning, during the initial handshake, when your computer and the server are agreeing on the security keys. The attacker jumps in and passes fake authentication keys to both you and the application server. Each side thinks it has established a secure connection with the other.
But they've both actually established a connection with the attacker in the middle.
Precisely. The attacker holds both sets of keys and can decrypt, read, and re-encrypt all the traffic flowing between you and the real server.
Devious.
And one more to mention is SSL stripping. This one's a bit different. Instead of trying to maintain a fake secure connection, it forces your connection down from secure HTTPS to non-secure standard HTTP. The attacker intercepts your initial attempt to connect via HTTPS. They then establish a secure HTTPS connection to the real server themselves. But to you, they present the website over plain, unencrypted HTTP. So you don't see the padlock icon, you might not notice, or you might assume the site just isn't secure for some reason.
And meanwhile, the attacker is talking securely to the real site.
Yes. They relay your unencrypted information securely to the server, get the secure response, decrypt it, and send it back to you unencrypted. They strip the SSL away from your end of the connection.
It's just layer upon layer of deception. It feels almost overwhelming. So after hearing all that, the obvious question for anyone listening, anyone just trying to bank online or shop safely, is what on earth can we do? How do you even start defending against attacks that are this intricate, this sneaky?
It really drives home the point that vigilance and proactive measures are just essential. This isn't a problem with a single fix. It's an ongoing battle. Like Sharon Knowles, the CEO of Vinci Cybersecurity, says, and I think this captures it well, Vinci Cybersecurity continues our efforts to inform, educate, and protect our clients from the dangers of cyber attacks. Quote, the world of cybersecurity is ever-changing, and we must remain vigilant to keep up with and overtake the methods used by these criminals. It's about staying ahead, or at least keeping pace.
That quote really highlights the dynamic nature of this. It's not static. So how does a company like Vinci Cybersecurity actually help? You mentioned informing and protecting, but also earlier you touched on how these can be entry points for longer attacks. Does Vinci help with investigating these things too, finding out how it happened?
Absolutely. Their approach is definitely multifaceted. It's not just about putting up firewalls and waiting. It's about actively hunting for weaknesses and understanding threats. So for protection and also for investigation after an incident, or even proactively, they offer services like a security assessment trial. This is where they really dig into a client's systems to find those vulnerabilities before the bad guys do.
Finding the cracks before they're exploited.
Exactly. Their Test Your Domain service does something similar for web-facing parts of the business. And their dark web scan is incredibly important. It actively searches the dark web for compromised credentials, logins, passwords associated with the client. Finding those early can prevent an account takeover or, well, an MITM attack using stolen credentials.
That seems crucial for prevention.
It is. They also have Cyber Protect services, which offer broader security coverage, often with a free trial period. And their phishing simulations are key. Remember how spoofing is a big part of MITM? These simulations train employees to recognize those fake emails, fake logging pages. It directly tackles the methods we've been discussing by making people the first line of defense.
Building that human firewall.
Precisely. And beyond the tech services, they put a huge emphasis on training and awareness. They offer staff awareness programs, specific training on understanding phishing, even more technical stuff like OSINT 101, and various certifications. Because ultimately, even the most sophisticated attack often relies on someone clicking a bad link or trusting a fake certificate or using weak passwords. Education is vital. They also provide resources like articles on cybersecurity, data breaches, social engineering, keeping people informed. So yes, this whole package, the technical assessments, the dark web monitoring, the simulations, the deep training, it's all geared towards not just reacting, but actively investigating potential weaknesses and preventing these attacks before they cause damage. It builds resilience.
Okay, we've really covered a lot of ground today on man-in-the-middle attacks.
Yeah.
We started with the basic idea, a criminal inserting themselves invisibly into your digital conversations. We talked about the serious impact, identity theft, financial loss, even being a gateway for those longer-term APT attacks. And we broke down those two key stages. First, interception, how they get in the middle using things like dodgy Wi-Fi, IP spoofing, ARP spoofing, DNS spoofing. Then, that critical second stage, decryption, how they make sense of supposedly secure data using HTTPS spoofing, SSL beast, SSL hijacking, or SSL stripping, often by tricking the trust systems.
And running through all of that is the constant theme, the need for ongoing vigilance, for awareness. Understanding how these attacks actually work is genuinely the first, most vital step towards protecting yourself, your data, your organization.
It really is. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Knowing now about this intricate dance, this stealthy manipulation involved in an MITM attack, how might that change how you look at public Wi-Fi? Or maybe how carefully you check that a website connection is actually secure, looking beyond just the padlock? What small shift in your online habits could potentially make a really big difference to your digital security? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into man-in-the-middle cyber attacks. We really encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning about cybersecurity awareness. It matters.